Hello and welcome to Turning Lewks, a beauty and makeup podcast. I am your host Darren, and welcome back to another episode. This episode I'm so excited for. This MUA is such an icon. I adore their makeup. They've worked with some icons and legends like Jade, Esteem, Taste, Bimini, Julia Fox. Like they have done makeup for the it girls that are around at the moment. People that are leading makeup, people that you look at and you're like, I love their makeup. Byron has done their makeup. I'm so excited to get chatting with Byron London on this episode. We dive into talking about their makeup, where they get inspiration from, the kind of current makeup trend that's almost anti-beauty and anti kind of glam. We talk about film and TV makeup. It's a great, amazing chat. I can't wait for you all to listen to it. So let's get right into it. Oh yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
At the moment, there's kind of a real shift in like kind of makeup towards it's almost like anti-glam, archaic, like 90s inspired esque kind of beauty. Why do you think that kind of vibe is resonating with people right now?
I mean, it could have to do with the sort of trend cycle that we're in with everything, with fashion, with music, with beauty. Sort of everything comes back around. But I do think it is also a bit of a pushback on the sort of very often unattainable Instaglam, very perfected image that we've kind of had over the last 10 years. I think that like sort of perfectly blended eyeshadow, flawless skin, often very filtered image is less appealing now. I also think that we just love a bit of nostalgia. I think it feels safe, it feels comfortable, and like the 90s were sort of a turn in beauty, the same way that we're experiencing now with the change from the soft glam or the sort of clean girl aesthetic to this more alt 90s grungy vibe. I think that they had that shift too, where they went from all of the models looking very, sort of blonde and bright-eyed and tanned and tall. And then we had the sort of like Kate Moss era and yeah, the don't like to use the term, but heroin chic vibe that sort of came about, and that was kind of like an anti what was happening before. And I think maybe we're just experiencing that again.
And like I often see that kind of almost like set in a lot of the work you do, like obviously with Bimini and even with like Jade and stuff. Are you inspired by the trend, or is it more their aesthetic that kind of brings that out in like brings that kind of vibe out?
I mean, it's definitely very collaborative. I think that I often take the lead from their beauty references and their point of view when it comes to beauty. Bim has been inspired by the 90s since she started drag. We're very similar in that way, where we look at a lot of references, but try and make it more personal by modernizing it and tweaking it to what feels more authentic now. Yeah, I think it is very collaborative. It's about getting into those artists' heads and understanding their beauty references and working my viewpoint in there somehow.
And obviously saying like the references, we're looking back at like mostly the 90s kind of. Do you see like this kind of makeup today as a form of like social commentary or like rebellion at all? I mean, you kind of said that a little bit there when you talk about like going against like the high glam or even clean girl aesthetic. But I think there's this thing that's something more to it that's almost like it's this anti-idea of beauty a little bit too.
Well, yeah, I think for a while we were sort of fed tutorials by makeup influencers, where do you remember there was a time where there was like, I'm going to recreate this influencer's makeup, and they would find a tutorial and literally buy every single product that that influencer had used to recreate this look. We don't have the money for that anymore. Like we're dipping into recession core over here, and people just can't do that. I think that we're bored of being sold products and we want to be sold inspiration instead. And I think that it is a sort of direct rebellion against this commercial pressure to buy endless products to achieve this flawless, often very unattainable look. Especially with the whole clean girl thing. I mean, it's sold to us as this no makeup, and it often requires a lot of makeup and a lot of very expensive makeup. And I think that, yeah, people now want something that's a bit more authentic, a bit more raw. And I mean, I still do get clients that want that image, and it's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it, but you have to kind of make it feel authentic to them. And I always try and slip in something that makes it feel a little bit more lived in, or a bit more cinematic in a way. Like I love like a snogged lip that looks like, you've just been shagged in the back of a cab, or an eyeliner that looks like you put it on the night before. Like I love making it feel more real. And I think that's where we're kind of heading.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, there are a lot of artists, similar artists doing kind of the similar kind of vibes. You have like Not Another Hannah, Nico Haggison, even like Andrew Darling, Sterling Tool, and yourself doing this kind of like almost new wave kind of makeup-y style. What's it like to be part of that kind of era of makeup where people are really heavily inspired by the kind of style of makeup that you are kind of creating out there, like, and the idols that you're putting into like these beats that people are so heavily inspired by?
Yeah, I think what the nice thing is that a lot of the people that you've mentioned there, well, most of them, they're artists, and it's nice to see artists being championed for their work, because when you look at the content, it feels a lot more, um, I say a lot more tutorials rather than products being pushed, which is exciting. And I think like they're leading with artistry, and not product sales. And it's a very saturated market in terms of, makeup artists and influencers and stuff. And I think that they're all embracing imperfection and rawness. And I think that's what makes people pay attention to them.
And it's that kind of interesting thing where there seems to be a shift back into really looking at makeup artists and being inspired by the makeup artists themselves and kind of raising their profiles up again. It feels like it's this partly like anti-influencer vibe and actually looking back into the artistry rather than just an everyday kind of person doing makeup too.
Yeah, I think also artists have just got a bit more of a face now. Like I think with a lot of brands being led by artists now,
Yeah.
artistry is kind of being put back in the forefront of things, rather than it being about who the product is being sold on. And I think that people want to see a specific point of view rather than a perfectly curated image. They want to see a point of difference, even if it doesn't relate to how they personally want to look themselves. I think that it's more inspiring to show that authenticity than this sort of like, prim and perfect image.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any brands that like you are like particularly keeping an eye on or like that are kind of your kind of almost either go-tos or whatever, or is it whoever sends you the best makeup?
Well, I love what Isame has done with her brand. I think that, God, that is everything that I would want to do with brand marketing. Like it's rebellious, it's sexy, and it's not a beige neutral palette that's super sellable to the mass market. It makes the user have to think a little bit. And I love her points of reference. I love what she's doing with the marketing and the brand campaigns, and she's releasing makeup like it's fashion collections rather than it being, micro trend based. And I love what she's doing. I also love what Danessa has done, um, because it's really core products. It's not, throwaway collections that are just for the moment. When she puts something in her line, it tends to stay because it's really been thought about and really been worked on. And I think you just see that with a lot of the makeup artists that have brands, is they've worked on set, they've worked in film or TV or on clients for a long time, and they know what is needed. And I think that's why they've kind of got the edge now on the market.
If you were going to create your own brand, what would be kind of your launch product be? Or what would the vibe of the like brand be?
Product wise, I feel like every makeup artist dream is to create a palette, because we spend so much time making our own palettes anyway. We're always ripping off the beautiful packaging that people have made and digging and depotting and putting things in new palettes. So I think I'd love to create a palette. What I'd love is there's a lot of pressed pigment palettes on the market. I'd love like a creams palette of different textures that you could use for like multi-use. Like I'd have some creams in there that dry down matte and waterproof that you could use as eye bases, eyeliners, lip liners, cheek stains, and then I'd have some creamy ones that you could use again on the cheeks, on the lips as lipstick, or as a more glossy eye, and then maybe like some balmy textures, like some glazes that you could use as like a cheek topper or a glossy eyelid or a lip gloss. I like just something that you could use with like your fingers and just get in there and use different things for different things. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'd love to see some more cream palettes on the market.
True makeup artist talking about something and want it to be like multi-use and multi-purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes life easier for your kit, doesn't it? But also, I think that people like that for themselves too. There was a time when I worked in cosmetic retail where a lot of brands were bringing out these sort of like face palettes. So they'd have a blusher, a bronzer, a brightening powder, a few eyeshadows and stuff, but they were always your standard really warm bronzer, really pink blusher, sort of yellowy brightening powder. And I'd love to see something that's a bit more versatile. And creams are so versatile. You can just do so much with them. And artists are always using eyeliners for lip liners for eyeliners, pressed powder, eyeshadows for blushes, where we know that it's just a formula that can be used on the face, and it's up to you how you want to use that. But I'd love to see more multi-use products actually marketed to show people that things are just pencils, things are just creams, things are just powders. It's up to you what you do with them. You can have fun. If you want to have red lip liner as a skinny eyebrow, why not? You know?
And I think, yeah, it's one thing I think makeup artists really champion is that kind of multi-using of products that exist in a format where I think sometimes when brands even come out with multi-use products, like even at the moment, like Makeup Forever come out with those like artistic to chunky ones and stuff, and even like the other
Yeah.
pencils, they're so marketed in a use this in a multi-use way that like that you're kind of well, not forced to, but like it's like yes, now it's a massive chunky pencil, and it's like I can use this in multi ways, but it's actually made it more difficult to use this as an
Yeah.
eyeshadow base because it's such a thick stick. Where
So true. Like it didn't need to be a big stick. Yeah, like Emily Wood. Emily Wood does those videos where she grabs like a lip liner and she does her eyeliner, then she scribbles it across her cheek, blends it out with her fingers, and she uses the same pencil on her lips. Like she creates these really like homogenous tonal looks just out of like one product. And that's just a pencil at the end of the day. We don't need it to be chunkier or bigger to show that we can use it on the cheek. I think we just need to be shown how to use these products that are already out there. It's not about creating new products. I actually wish more brands would just focus on their core lines and educating people how to use those in different ways, inspiring people how to use those core lines rather than just keep producing more and more stuff, because we need to top up our makeup collection every now and then anyway. We don't need to be sold a new thing that does the same thing as the other 12 things in our drawer already.
capitalism, eh?
Exactly, I know. But we're all a sucker for it. I'm not gonna lie. Like I still do love a product launch. But yeah, I wish there was more focus on education with makeup, because most of the time when people go and buy a whole brand new load of makeup, they could probably achieve the look with stuff they already have at home. It's just about how to use that. And if the brands educate people on how to use those products in multiple ways, they're going to run out of that product. They're going to need to buy it again. And I think like makeup artists, we have these sort of hero products in our kit that we will buy over and over and over again. Whereas I feel like the average consumer doesn't do that. Like they run out of foundation and they're looking for the next one, or they run out of lip liner and they're looking for the next one. They're not buying the same thing over and over again. And actually, I think brands should recognize that brand loyalty and product loyalty is way more important than following these trend cycles. Half the time, you can achieve this new trend with products that are already in the core line. We don't need a strawberry girl collection. Just use the red and pink stuff that's already in your line, you know?
I think that's one thing that I think adds like social media really blew up is the idea of brand loyalty really started to disappear for a lot of brands, and I think that's how they've had to deal with that lack of brand loyalty, where people would go to Selfridges or Superdrug or Boots and go to the same things and buy the same things over again. With the rise of social media and that funness of new, brands then had to kind of adapt and then have now become into that kind of like this like weird, yeah, like you said, collection-y based things where a lot of the time, or they're rebranding the same products. Like they'll just discontinue something and put it into maybe different packaging, but it's the same product that it was before.
Yeah. But like that thing of newness is fleeting, and like I see so many artists online whose content does very well, and their content is based around discontinued items and discontinued things that people can't buy anymore. I see TikTok is full of videos of people talking about here's a lipstick that used to be sold in the 90s, and like here's this, and like I think we we are invested in newness, but newness can be different. It doesn't need to be a new product. It can just be a new way of using that product, or a new. It can be a trend, but like I said, just with products that we already have.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's an interesting one because I'm also like I think you said earlier, like I'm constantly buying new things too. Anyway, even though I know I've got like that stuff in there, or I'm like this concealer I like, it works perfectly well,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I'll
it's
buy
a
a different one.
dopamine hit, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's the dopamine hit at the end of the day. And also, I was saying about the whole recession core thing. Um, when we are looking like we're going towards a recession, lipstick sales go up. And I think it's because if people can't afford, fancy clothes or a holiday, getting that £30 lipstick as a treat feels really good. And it is that dopamine spike. I get it. But yeah, it's not completely necessary. We can get away with using what we have.
Definitely. I find it also, yeah, talking about that, like, buying like lipstick sales going up when because you can't afford like a new dress or whatever. Interesting when you think about like luxury brands, because I think a lot of people nowadays, like, oh, they would never be able to afford a Gucci purse or a Prada dress, but a Gucci bronzer and a Prada eyeshadow that's a lot cheaper, but it still gets you that hit of, oh, I've got something from those luxury brands. I think that's something that's
Yeah.
like rising so much more as well now, and I find that quite an interesting thing.
Yeah, well, like luxury brands, they sell the vision of, these gorgeous gowns and stuff walking down the runway, but that's unattainable for most. And getting a slice of that pie is purchasing the perfume or purchasing the lipstick and feeling like you are a part of that world in a way.
Yeah, agree. And also this back to your makeup artistry. Let's talk about you. And you've worked on faces like Julia Fox, Bimini Taste, Self-Esteem, Jade Thirwall, all modern icons of unapologetic self-expression. What do you think like kind of connects them through your kind of makeup style? Because they all feel like they have very unique makeup styles and aesthetics, but there's also something that kind of also ties them all together, and they're all kind of icons of just doing things their own way. And as a makeup artist, how do you put your own take on these people, whilst also, having your own kind of style and autonomy over the makeup too?
Yeah, yeah, they're all very different. But I think the thing that kind of connects them all is they are very committed to the look, you know? They're up for a look, and they are all great storytellers with their beauty. They're all gorgeous, gorgeous faces already, but they're not afraid of committing to a character for that moment. Or sort of pushing a boundary. They're real like sort of risk takers, which makes it a lot more freeing as an artist to work with them. They could very easily just follow the sort of beauty standard pattern and be stunning, but I think that they push boundaries in that way, and working with them is very collaborative. Like it's a case of sometimes they bring ideas to me, sometimes I bring ideas to them, and then just sort of meeting in the middle. I love pushing an idea when I can. So when I'm brought references that are very, Pinterest friendly, I love to take points of that and then show them things that might push them in a direction that feels a little bit more me. But while still, telling their story. At the end of the day, I am telling their story, not mine. Because it is client based. It's not like working on an editorial where you can just sort of be very, do as you likey. But I think the great thing about all of them is that they're all fashion girls, so they're able to take these really obscure references and look at it through an editorial lens. And they also are able to carry that look with such confidence that even if it doesn't sort of follow the typical beauty standards, people are able to see the beauty that they see within that reference because they carry it so well. So it's all, yeah, confidence that they have and collaboration that they commit to, and
Yeah, actually, going on what you said there about like them all being fashion girlies, like they are like all like people that push boundaries like fashions and try and fun different things. Does that make doing their makeup even more fun? Because it's like they're not just wearing a standard gown, they're actually doing something a bit more edgy and stuff
yeah,
too.
yeah, I love it. Like sometimes Bim will come up to me and she'll be like, right, I want like swamp monster, like swampy goblin vibes. And I'm just like, yeah, totally, like sure, let's do it. And also people like Taste, Bim, they've never said no to me, really. Like I've never really gone to them with the concept where they've been like, oh no, we won't do that. They just go for it. And I think like if they're able to put their trust in you, it is really freeing, and you can just use really obscure references. And I try to do the same in return when I'm brought references like Swamp Monster or whatever. I'm just like, yeah, sure, like why not? Because finding beauty in things that aren't perceived as beautiful is where it feels more edgy and where it feels more boundary pushing and like you're doing something that, you know, um, has more of an impact.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a story you're telling when you're making something beautiful that isn't traditionally seen as beautiful. It's like, okay, well, there's a work I'm doing here, right? There's an artistry, a level of artistry I'm doing here where I'm having to change a perception or something to make it seem different to what people typically interpret it as.
Yeah, for sure.
I say a lot of your like work a lot of times feels kind of like quite theatrical in a good way, yet personal. How do you walk that line between like drama and intimacy in your
I
makeup?
think leading with intimacy, and then the drama sort of comes naturally. I think, like I said, beauty is all about storytelling, and it's just working out what that story is. And when you're collaborating with someone, if they're knackered, I have to work out, right, well, should we lean into it? Do we make you more knackered? Do we lean into those eye bags? Let's chuck a little bit of shimmer on them. Let's highlight those eye bags. Or do you need to feel energized today? Do you want me to give you that energy by making you look fresher so you feel fresher? Or do you need to feel masculine today? Do you need to feel a divine feminine energy today? What is the feeling? And I think like leading with a feeling rather than a mood board of really pretty images is the way to sort of like bring out a bit of theatre in the makeup because you can sort of work with where they're at and also what they're working on. Like sometimes an artist is working on a very specific project, especially within music. Music is so personal, and often, an album is telling a story of how they've been feeling for the last year or so. So, yeah, leading with feeling, I think, is the main thing.
Nice. And sometimes that feeling is just a cowgirl outfit.
Exactly, exactly. Well, that was a Diana Ross reference,
Yeah.
a very early Diana Ross reference. But the makeup had nothing to do with it really. Jade just said, make the gays gag. And that was the makeup reference for that day. That was the feeling. So
And the
hopefully we
makeup was
achieved it.
stunning. Like on that big screen, I could see it throughout the night. Like it didn't move or budge at all, but it was just like so nice. Like the whole time, I was like every time I saw, it, I was like, she's got really nice makeup on. And obviously, by this point, at this point, I didn't know you had done the makeup. But every time, like they zoomed into her face on the screen, so I was like, damn, that's some pretty makeup.
You know what? at festivals with those screens, they are so sharp and high contrast that if the makeup looks good on that screen, I know I've done a good job because they are not forgiving, those big ass screens. But yeah, that with things like that, less was more for her skin, but more on the eyes, more on the lip. Like I always find with performance stuff, um, she's a mover, she's a headbanger. She's running around that stage. It was sunny and hot, like I knew she was going to be dripping. So the skin was really minimal. And then we just brought more impact on the eyes and lips, especially because the outfit was black and white. So we wanted to have a little bit of fun on the face. But I'm glad you liked it. And I'm glad it looked good on that screen because those screens give me nightmares.
Yeah, no, it did look good because it was like a burgundy kind of smoky-ish eye, wasn't it, or something like that,
Yeah, we
right?
used like a bunch of different shimmers, like
Yeah,
coppers, pinks,
yeah,
burgundies. Yeah.
yeah. It looks really pretty. Talking about it girls, what does it girl makeup mean to you in 2025? Is it about attitude, edge, or something else entirely?
I think it's just about doing whatever the fuck you want, you know? Like, I think it's less about perfection and more about presence. It's about what energy you're bringing to a room. And I think like the modern day it girl isn't trying to influence you into looking like them. They're influencing you into looking like yourself and inspiring you to, bring that energy into your makeup rather than selling a beauty ideal. And it's often very like unapologetic and it's about self-expression and empowerment rather than, yeah, an unattainable beauty. And I think the makeup feels more cinematic in a way. It feels more, I always use the term lived in, but I guess that's not really a feeling, it's more of a look. But yeah, more of that like less polished and more raw, authentic vibe. I think that feels very it girl.
And I think that's an interesting kind of way we're of looking at makeup, isn't it? Like that kind of self-expression, confidence, that kind of lived in you seeing you in the makeup,
Yeah.
is like so important to like in the world where we're constantly being told what we should and shouldn't be and look like.
Yeah, yeah, for real. And my reference points have always been I'm really inspired by cinema, and I think that's because those characters are playing, those actors they're playing real people, and the makeup has to feel authentic. And sometimes a character, it wouldn't make sense for them to look like they sat in a makeup chair for 3 hours. And sometimes I think the sexiest makeup looks like it didn't take 3 hours. I think sometimes, makeup looks really sexy when it looks like the person who's wearing it did it themselves. I know sometimes I'm working with pop stars or musicians or whatever, and they are obviously sat in the makeup chair for a while and they have got a whole glam team around them, but I think it looks really sexy when it doesn't look like that necessarily. I don't know. I always think about, have you ever watched Gia, the movie?
No.
Gia, it's a movie about uh, a supermodel in the 90s, Gia Calvari, and she's played by Angelina Jolie, and the makeup was done by Sandy Linter, I want to say. And Sandy was Gia's lover in real life. Gia had a really like turbulent life. She went from being this very like punky, underground, tattooed, boisterous, gobby New Yorker, and then she ended up on the front cover of Vogue and she was, swept into this world of beauty, but she didn't fit the traditional beauty standards that were around in the 90s. And I look at the makeup in that film and I'm so inspired by it because it's as personal as you can get. I mean, the makeup is obviously not on Gia, it's on Angelina Jolie, but the makeup is being applied by Sandy, who was Gia's actual lover and makeup artist in the 90s before Gia passed away. And the makeup in that movie, there's just so much good makeup in that movie. There's scenes where she, at the beginning, where she has like pink spiky hair, and she's just got like messy black eyeliner, and she doesn't give a shit about the beauty world or anything like that. And then she gets swept into the world of fashion, and there's this gorgeous scene where she's walking a runway in this big white sort of wedding dress gown, and there's all these white rose petals falling everywhere, and the makeup looks very like Kevin Aquan sculpted, smoky eye, gorgeous lip. And then my favorite part of the movie is where she is at a photo shoot, and we probably wouldn't do this today, but the photo shoot is very Japanese inspired, and she has this sort of white pale face and these big block black eyebrows that point upwards, and she gets frustrated about being at this photo shoot, and she wants to escape and be hedonistic, so she runs away from the shoot in this big red silk gown and jumps on the back of some guy's motorbike and makes him drive to across the Brooklyn Bridge. And like in the scene, her hair is just like blowing in the wind and her makeup's getting more and more disheveled, and then she ends up scoring and returning to Sandy, her makeup artist, the next morning, and her beautiful porcelain makeup that was at this photo shoot was now cracked and covered in blood, and you could see that she'd been crying, and her eyeliner was all messy. And there's just so many makeup references that I love, but the overall thing that I love is just like this raw authenticity, because it's lived in, it's real, it's makeup that's been through something, it's telling a story. And that's why I love film. I could talk about makeup and film all day long. I love the rawness in it. But there's so many movies from the 90s that are just like amazing for makeup references. Like, the Batman movies, like the 90s ones.
Yeah, yeah.
So good. Batman movies now are also dark and serious and like moody, moody, moody. And like they were just so stupidly camp in the 90s. Like Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy, and Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze and all of that. Like Arnold being covered in silver reflective shiny glitter, and like Uma having these like prosthetic leaves coming out of her eyes, and so good. And Sugar and Spice, in Batman Forever, played by Drew Barrymore and Debbie Mazar.
It's been
Like
so long
those
since I've seen
makeup
those
references.
films, but I can
Oh,
remember the reference barely, but
go back and
yes.
have a look. So good. Like Drew has this like the 90s face, like the skinny eyebrow and the frosted lip, and like, oh, it's so good. And then Debbie's look has this like skinny eyebrow that like goes into a weird sort of shape that's like filled with silver eyeshadow. It's
It's like
makeup perfection. It's
they were
so
like Tim
good.
Burton films, right? Them ones. Those
Yeah,
ones,
yeah,
yeah.
so good. I think the makeup was done by I want to say Ricky Baker, I think. He also did the makeup for like The Grinch, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars, like very like he was special effects, but his work on those Batman movies with Tim Burton is just high camp. Like even
Yeah.
the Riddler being Jim Carrey, and he had this like fuchsia orangey hair, and then like had like matching blush. It's just so good. They like the Batman movies would never do that now, and they're all too dark and serious and grey.
Yeah, the nice that you said we're doing like camp drag basically. Like it was,
It was drag, real drag. Yeah, it's so good.
but yeah, no, I think those films you remember them for their makeup as well. Like those characters stand out because of the way they looked, and it was like a lot of times it was that kind of over the top makeup of them, right?
Yeah, yeah. I love character makeup. I think you can see that in my work, but like I love
Hmm.
character makeup. I love my favorite movie ever is not 101, actually 102 Dalmatians with Glenn Close. Like the outfits and that of her as Cruella, and the makeup and the hair is just so good. So, so good. And I love like that storytelling with makeup, because in that movie Cruella she's given some sort of treatment where she's no longer evil. She's like in recovery from being evil, and she wants to be called Ella, not Cruella. And her hair is like very like perfect and rounded and soft, and the makeup's all very soft, and the clothing is like no fur. It's all like sequins and wools and stuff. And then in the movie, the Big Ben's chime reverses the effects of the therapy that she's had, and she turns back into Cruella, and the hair all of a sudden like spikes out and jolts, and like her shoulder pads stick out into spikes, her nails turn into claws, her makeup gets more wild, and it's all just like popping off, and then she's back into Cruella from Ella. And I love that, like, yeah, storytelling in makeup and in hair and in costume is amazing in movies. It's so inspiring, and I love to apply that to my work.
I think the thing, especially when it comes to makeup, though, a lot of times it's so subtle, the changes that a character will go through throughout a film, their makeup like will slowly, slightly change as their maybe character develops in whatever way that is. And like for the everyday person, you might not notice that it's like a subconscious thing you're noticing. But as a makeup artist, you're like, oh look, I've just noticed that like their eyeshadows slightly get more and more intense as this film's going on, or their
Yeah,
lipstick's ch shade is changing, or etc. etc. And like those things, like slight differences, they're creating that character's transformation. And I think that the
yeah.
subconsciousness of it is the thing that I think is so interesting a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I love it. And a lot of musicians are using that to tell stories in music now. Like, I wasn't involved in Jade's music videos, but I love what she did with the hair, where she plays herself in different forms, and one of the forms is her like pop star, you know, big alter ego, and that's like she's got like red hair, but then she plays herself before fame, and that's her with her long brown curly hair, but then you see these little red streaks running through the back, and that's her pop star self like growing in and like and forming. And I love it when people do that. I think it's so clever. I remember the first time I bumped into her after those music videos, I couldn't wait to tell her that I had noticed this, and was like, storytelling, yes! Like, it's so exciting when people do that. I love it. And I think a lot of artists do it because of, when they're in album cycle, they are pushing a new world or a new vision. But I love it when it's really nuanced, and they've gotten a bit nerdy with it, and they've really thought about the little details. It's so exciting as a beauty enthusiast to like follow that.
I feel like Jay's someone that actually really cares about those details and those kind of things as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Well, I think that's about all the questions I've got anyway, and probably about time we have anyway. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming on.
No worries. I guess also while I've got your audience's ear,
Yes.
if I could just direct them
Yes.
over to notaphase.org. Not are an amazing, great grassroots charity that is trans-led, and our trans brothers and sisters need all the help that they can get right now. As I'm sure you're aware, the current climate. So I just wanted to say, if you've got some time to go over and see what work they're doing, and if you can possibly donate.
Amazing. We love Not a Phase. They are amazing. So
Yeah.
yes, thank
Thank
you
you
for
so much
that.
for having me, babe.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check out Not a Phase. Like Byron said, they are an amazing organization, much needed and in this moment in time, and they're doing incredible, amazing work. I've had the pleasure of seeing them around, having spoken to Danny, the CEO of the charity. She's amazing. She's all awesome. She's so hardworking, as everyone is at Not a Phase. Maxine, who does a lot of the social media stuff now, like amazing team of people doing amazing work. So please go check them out, support if you can, and just also just share their content if you can't financially support them as well. Don't forget to follow Byron on Instagram. That will all be down below. And follow us on TikTok and Instagram like always. And remember, trans rights are human rights. Live your best glam life no matter how much makeup you're wearing. And always remember your SPF. Bye.